So World War II led to changes in how white Australia was understood and implemented. So here you have footage from World War II with the Japanese in Darwin. So this really had an impact on the Australian psyche because they understood that the British wouldn't come to their rescue, and that really with only 7 million inhabitants they were not, they couldn't defend their country. So this led to the policy called populate or perish. So populate or perish was developed just after the Second World War. At the time, Ben Chifley from the Labour Party was Prime Minister, and Arthur Calwell was the First Minister for Immigration. Okay. So really they created a ministry for immigration. So you understand that immigration was seen as the only way for the country to thrive. Okay, so you had only 7 million inhabitants in 1945, and the government thought that this figure had to be trebled. So they developed a sustained immigration program. Why? So the goal was to meet the labour shortages, to protect Australia from external threats, because they thought that there might be a third World War. So they wanted to make sure that they had enough people to defend the country, and also, of course, to create prosperity. Right, so in April 1947, the Egyptian registered SSR Misr arrived in Australia. So it was a new migrants, refugees coming to Australia. But they were from 26 different countries, mainly from the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and East Africa. Okay, so you see Calwell there shaking the hand of a little boy, and I don't know if I have the video there. No. But the newsreel that were shown in the cinema of the arrival of the Misr, stated that those new arrivals were un-British, un-Australian, and therefore unsuitable. Okay, so there really was a backlash against the arrival of those new immigrants because, people thought that they were too dark. Okay, so Calwell had been Minister for Information during the war, so he knew a lot about propaganda, and I'm going to let you watch how he tried to convince people that, they needed immigration to survive.
For immigrants. If we have no ships, we shall get no immigrants. And without immigration, the future of the Australia we know will be both uneasy and brief. As a nation, we shall not survive. Give me the ships, and I will guarantee to load them with the right type of our future Australia.
It's a very bad picture. Right, so what do you need to know here? So you had a campaign that was, yeah, okay, it's better to go here first, sorry. I mixed up the two slides. So after the backlash of the miser boat, Colwell went to Europe to find immigrants, okay? And they wanted to make sure that they would be white, healthy, and beautiful. So here is some footage. Okay, so blonde women, can imagine that they have blue eyes. So he wanted to make sure that the Australians wouldn't react like previous time. So Colwell told the International Refugee Organization that they would take on 12,000 settlers a year. And in November 1947, you had 843 Latvians, Lithuanians, and Estonians arriving in Australia. So between 1947 and 1953, this meant that Australia took in 170,000 displaced persons. So I'm getting back there. So they would have liked to have more British stock, but it was difficult to attract them. So you had campaigns like Bring a Britain, okay, and also assisted passage tickets where British settlers would only pay the tickets £10. Okay, so that led to the notion, well, the nickname, the £10 POM for British migrants arriving after World War II, the £10 POM, because the fare was really cheap. It would usually be more like £75. And of course, while they were trying to attract as many Europeans, blue-eye Europeans, they were deporting the Asians that had come during the war as refugees, or, well, mostly as refugees. So I don't know if there's sound there. Oh, do you need the sound? Yes. I think it's okay, the sound there.
100 Chinese Formosan women, some with their husbands, and 112 children were compelled to board this hell ship already jammed past the danger point. Military police seized, and none too gently, all who refused to board the ship.
Okay, so you see that it was quite violent. People had been living there for years, and they were forced to go back to Asia. So Colwell really implemented the White Australia policy, well, without any exception. Okay, so then there was a slow evolution of the acceptance of non-European migrants. Okay, so in 1947, permanent residency is granted to non-Europeans if they come for business reasons and if they have lived in Australia continuously for 15 years. In 1950, the Colombo Plan allowed students from Asian countries to study in Australia, but they had to go back to their country after their studies. And in 1958, the dictation test is abolished. In 1959, Australians can sponsor Asian spouses for citizenship. So you see here the evolution. Well, so when did White Australian policy ended, as far as immigration from Asia was concerned? So in 1966, the Migration Act established legal equality between the British, European and non-European migrants to Australia. In 1973 is seen as the legal end of White Australian policy with the Whitlam government. All migrants, regardless of their origin, are eligible for citizenship after 3 years. All international agreements related to immigration and race are ratified, and race is not a factor in selecting migrants. Okay, so and then there were further changes to the law, like in 1975, the use of the racial criteria for any official purpose is illegal. In 1978, there was a review of immigration law under the Fraser Liberal government that meant that the country of origin could no longer be used as part of the migrant selection process. So just to go over the different waves of non-European migrants. So in the 1960s and 1970s, you have the Lebanese after the Civil War. After 1975, the Vietnamese fleeing the communists. In the 1980s, you got boat people from Cambodia and China. In the 1990s, asylum seekers from the Middle East. Okay, so you had these different waves of non-European immigration, and some people were not too keen on this multicultural past, the idea that each culture brings something, well, that diversity brings something positive to the nation. So the historian who wrote the book I've been quoting extensively was among those who were against this evolution. So I'm just going to quote here. It was even called the Blaney debate. So that was in 1984. Okay, so the pace of Asian immigration to Australia is now well ahead of public opinion. Rarely in the history of the modern world has a nation given such a preference to a tiny ethnic minority of its population as the Australian government has done in the past few years, making that minority the favourite majority in its immigration policy. So he feared that this intake of Asian migrants threatened national cohesion. And well, he had to resign from his academic position, etc. So that's it for the first part on White Australia policy and Asian immigration. So we're going to talk about White Australia policy and what it meant for the Aborigines.